So once we have clear goals, again, what we want to do is be very specific about those important initiatives that will help our individual employees really attain those goals. And again, this is where a lot of companies break down that have gone through strategic planning, as they've gotten as far as the company goals, but maybe aren't quite as clear in how to engage the employees in the initiatives. Now again, keep in mind, you've already asked them from the SWOT analysis some of these questions where you're going to get a lot of information on this, the strengths, the weaknesses will tell you some areas of potential opportunities for initiatives, again, opportunities and threats, and you can derive some ideas from that. But again, at this stage, what we want to do is we want to talk to the company and tell them, based on what you've told me through the SWOT analysis, based on our vision, which we've all created, based on the mission, which we've all created, based on knowing the culture, the value of the culture we all want to create, because they were part of all that, right? And based on the goals we've all created, now we have to determine what specific focus of what initiatives are we going to do? Now, here's some of the information. Again, you have that summary report. Remember, if you've done that priority project planning system, you've got that in a nice report. And you say, here's some of the areas in these different departments. And especially if you version this by department, which is very important, I think. You have some of the key ideas from each of these departments in terms of what initiatives will help you to get there to that goal. So in this section, now you're starting to get specific and you're laying out those top 5 to 10, no more than 10, usually 5 is enough, initiatives for each department. You want to pick a couple underneath each one of these goals. And if that department thinks, oh, I don't have anything to do with customer service, or oh, I don't have anything to do with, think harder. How might you add value to that goal and come up with some initiatives for that? Now, George, in my years of consulting, one of the things I've noticed is that, again, many companies have their goals and they begin to form their initiatives. Maybe they've taken their management team off into a retreat and they've made some lists of some important initiatives, but somehow that doesn't get down to the employee in terms of engaging that employee. And before we get into our system that we have, just give us some ideas of what you did at Pfizer to engage people into that whole process.
Well, I did 2 things. First of all, I glued my management teams together. In the early days of building a company, I've always felt that I could outwork anybody, and practiced that by having my management team come in on Saturday mornings. Not a very favorite thing when I started the program, but when the other guys, our competitors, woke up on Monday morning, we were a day ahead of them. And they soon came to realize that. So the management team met often and shared the dream and the vision and built the dream and the vision. And they in turn would take that back to their departments. To reinforce that, I'm going back to the quarterly meetings, which I mentioned before. We would convey those things at that quarterly meeting so that every employee and almost everybody came to these meetings was aware of what was going on. Sharing information is key.
And certainly at Biz Remedies, we're available, both you, George, and myself, right, to do any of these kinds of strategic and leadership meetings if you want to take your employees off-site or just within your company. But one of the neat things, again, about technology nowadays is that, again, with this priority project planning system, you're able to engage even beyond the management team to the employees and get their feedback cross-functionally on what they think that other department over there needs to do. And that's important that they feel a voice around that, because oftentimes they're kind of looking over the cubicle into the other department thinking, well, if only they would do this, that would make my job a little bit easier. And again, don't forget with that SWOT analysis you did in step 1, you probably gathered some of that information, right?
Yeah.
And got some of that input, because we've asked what they think some of the weaknesses are in these different departments and opportunities. And we want to consider that cross-functional input, into creating these initiatives that are going to support the goals. So if you look at the screen right now, you'll see, for example, we have the way to do this is you choose a department and you choose a goal. And we're just using one of these goals, increase sales by 20%. We're using George's Pfizer goal. And then we say, okay, now based on that information from the SWOT analysis that we got, what were some of the common things that we heard were weaknesses and opportunities in our IT department? And again, you would know that if you version this out by department, and that's one of your options. And you can see here some examples. So, but notice these are initiatives. They have not been broken down yet into action steps, which is the next step. So once you have collaborated that way, and again, you can use our system to do that. You could actually do it manually through our ebook, or certainly you could hire us, for example, as a consultant to come in to do that, and certainly can be all those things together to have an outside facilitator. But then what you want to do is you want to actually, once those initiatives are chosen, you want to break them out into these action steps with this action worksheet. So take a look now at the screen and notice what we have here. We have the goal, the name of the initiative, the name of the team members, who's going to do what by when, and what additional resources might you need to actually make that initiative happen. And that's really important because you might have people within your company that are able to do most of the initiative, but it might get to a certain point where an expert is needed to come in to finish off the initiative. For example, a lot of times when I'm hired into a company, let's say they want to do something like redo their website. And they say, well, in addition to that, we want to do an intranet site. Now, they might have IT people in their company, and maybe their IT people are skilled at doing a website, but perhaps maybe they're not skilled in an intranet site. So you have your employees take that initiative as far as they can, and then you notice where perhaps maybe you need an outside resource to help you with just a certain piece of it. And then what you can do is you certainly can look at Biz Remedies and our expert consultant site. We have a whole expert consultant match system where you can match up an initiative with a consultant based on your budget, your location, your criteria. We can even match the value match. You can fill out that value match that we just showed you, and the consultants have filled that out too to make sure you get a match, kind of like an eHarmony match. Make sure they match your culture. It's like what you said. It's like hiring, right?
Yeah.
You can have somebody who's got all the smarts upstairs, but if they don't match your culture, it's a disaster.